Hello, and welcome to another episode of Philosophive. I'm your host, Justin Land, and today I have with me David Strickel, who channels the stream, and I'm a big fan and excited to talk with him. Hello, David.
Hi, Justin. Good to be here.
Thank you for coming and, being here. And yeah, I must say I've listened to the stream for on off for about a year, I would say, and I've tried many sources for information. You're always moving from one channel to the next, and you always get the same message, but it's always with that flair of the individual who's channeling. And yeah, yours is a very I feel like it does speak to me in many ways in your biography and the messages that you come through. Um, I'd like to just know how you started this, because I noticed on your website you talk about that it actually you realized you had this connection as a child, even, which I think is quite unusual. Maybe it's not. Just like people forget about that connection. And how was that development for you, and how did you become aware of this presence or this eternal knowledge and wisdom?
Yeah, looking back, I have recollection going really young. Some of my first memories, I had this sort of knowing that I just thought everybody had. And I think the reason that I think this is something that everybody has some level of, but we're taught to ignore it and sort of move away from it. And I think the unique thing about me is that I was born into a rather dysfunctional situation where I think I was the baby that was supposed to save the marriage. My father always wanted a daughter, and he had got a second son instead. And from what I gather, their marriage was already broken. And so my father was gone by the time I was 6. He met somebody else and left my mother for this other woman. And my mother really didn't have much interest in being a mother anymore. I don't think she ever really did in the first place. So I was really left to my own devices. So looking back now and sort of putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, I see that I think that perhaps I have a heightened ability, but also it was allowed to flourish because I was really sort of left alone as a child. And question from a very, very young age. And what the stream did for me as a child is it helped me survive. I had, I should have grown up to be a very different person than I grew up to be without any parental supervision. I remember my parents and other people around saying that I was going to end up in prison or I was going to end up dead. And, I just, because I was really independent in my thinking and I didn't really care much for school. I didn't care much for conforming to what society was telling me I was supposed to be. And there's contrast on all topics. The positive of that is that I didn't absorb a lot of what my mother, her negativity toward me, if you will, which was pretty severe, especially when I got into my preteen and teen years. Was pretty severe negativity. The whole "I never wanted you," "I hate you," "I wish you would die," "Why don't you kill yourself," all that,
Are you
all
serious?
that wonderful stuff.
She said this
Oh
to
yeah,
you. Wow, that's
oh
extreme.
yeah. She,
Yeah.
well, my mother was probably undiagnosed mentally ill.
Mm.
She was never a happy person. She lived her entire life in a pretty low vibration, and it only got worse as the years progressed. And again, she never wanted to get married and have kids, according to her, in the first place. It's something she thought she had to do. And then when my father left, she was left with these 2 children that she didn't want.
Mm.
And my brother was a little older, and he handled it differently than I did. But we both survived, and we both ended up being functional adults, which is a nice thing that came out of all that. So as a child, I know now that I had something different going on than most kids had. It gave me a knowingness. It gave me skills to survive, even though I didn't have the typical skills. I wasn't a good student, yet I managed to get myself sort of passed all the way through school. I didn't want to stay in high school beyond my class graduating, even though I wasn't caught up with all of them. So I went and took a GED after my senior year and got out and started a real estate development company. And I had no money. I had no trust fund. My mother was minimum wage. We were very poor, but I always lived From the time I was about 14 on, I operated like I had a lot of money, and I did. I always had money in abundance
Mhm.
flowing to me as a teenager because I knew enough about the law of attraction and the laws of the universe that I could bring that to me and that I could do or have or be anything. So at 19, I had no problem going to a landowner and a banker and an attorney and even the city and planning a real estate development.
Wow.
I just knew I could do it. Even
That's
though I had zero money to do it, I knew that I could do it. And I did that for about a year, and we had some success. It wasn't a wildly successful real estate venture by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a very good learning experience for me regarding business and things that I like to do. I'm very creative. So, starting out in life like that, and then moving more into a corporate type scenario, and then moving through life with some of these skills, but really ignoring the broader message that was available to me for a long time. I really thought, because I understood universal law. And really, spirituality to me is not the warm, fuzzy, angels are guiding me brand of spirituality that a lot of people love. And I'm not judging that. I think that that's a wonderful thought. If you believe that and you feel that, then for you, it's true. I believe that we all create our own bubble of reality, and I have no judgment against the staunch Christian that's in church every Sunday, believing in God and Jesus and all of that. If that serves them, I think that's great. If somebody believes in spirit guides and angels and all of that, I think that's great too. I think all of it is sort of the humanization of the energetic realm. And the energetic realm and science to me are really closer than a lot of us realize.
mm,
And it's nice to think of source as love. I believe source is love, that positive force of energy that created and continues to expand the entire universe. But everything beyond that, from what I've always gotten, is human construct. It's the humanization of the energetic realm because it helps us comprehend it, and that's fine. So for me, I really focused on universal law early on. And I thought, from my human perspective, that success and happiness in life was having a lot of nice stuff and having a lot of money because I didn't have it. And I was around a lot of people that did have it. And that almost made it a little more difficult. My father married a woman, they had a child. My stepmother's family had money. So my sister was always just showered with everything. Had everything she ever wanted as a child, and we did not. My brother and I would go down for Christmas and watch her just unwrap 50 gifts, and we would get a check, and that would be it. It was a nice check, but it was like $100 each. We got $100 each every year for
yeah,
Christmas, which was a lot more than a lot of kids get.
true.
But my sister would get a bicycle and a VCR and a television and go riding ponies and all this, not a pony, but a certificate to go ride ponies. She would get all kinds of lavish gifts, and it was just incredibly contrasting between the way we were treated and the way she was treated in that household. So to me, I wanted all that stuff. I wanted the stuff my cousins had. I wanted the stuff that my extended family were all sort of upper middle class, and I really wanted that experience. I thought that's what happiness was. So I spent the first 20 years of my adult life really focusing on that. And I reached age 40 and realized I always knew that I had something that other people didn't have, and I would go to psychics and I would try to figure it out. And at that time, from age 25 to about 40, I was doing really well in a corporate job, and I was trying to mold myself into this corporate guy. And so I would go to a psychic, and the psychic would say, and I went to one particular that was really good. She said, "You are a channel. You have this gift. You can share source energy, source consciousness with the world. You can do this. You can do that." And I remember thinking, I don't want any part of that. That's weird woo-woo stuff. I don't want anybody to know how weird and woo-woo I really am. I liked it internally, but I was judging it externally.
Exactly.
And so having that experience, and this was in my mid 30s, I saw a woman in Casadega, Florida. Casadega is a really cool little village in Florida of psychics and mediums. And so I saw this woman, and she told me all of this, and she tried to turn me on to Abraham. And she said, you are very much like this. And she had this big purple plastic binder, and it was Abraham. And I remember looking at it thinking, that sounds like some crazy Old Testament biblical stuff that I've worked really hard to move away from in my
Right.
life. I don't want any part of it. I don't know who this Abraham dude is. So I remember really being turned off by it. And then every once in a while, the Abraham thing would sort of come back around and I would ignore it. I didn't listen to it. I didn't want any part of it. And years later, after I was 40 years old, I was living in Seattle, Washington. I just moved to Seattle from Florida, and I had this car that was a rear drive car, and it wouldn't make it up the hill to the house that I bought, and it snowed all the time up there. And I remember my car wouldn't make it up the hill, and I really wanted to manifest at that time a black Range Rover. The story goes somewhere, trust me. So I wanted this black Range Rover, and I was already making a lot of money. I was living in a beautiful home. The car I was driving that wouldn't make it up the hill was a Mercedes. And I was in this place of, wow, I'm living in this beautiful house. I've got all the things that I thought I needed to be happy, yet there's still a big hole in my life and I'm not happy. And the problem was I didn't love me. So I ignored the spiritual side of me. I sort of used it, if you will, just to focus on the law of attraction in terms of manifesting money and material things. And that's what my life turned out to be at age 40. So I'm living in Seattle, this $1 million home, wanting this Range Rover. And this is around the time the book The Secret came out. And I read The Secret. It really resonated with me. I kind of thought right away, like, wow, this is so cool that this is getting out there, because I've understood this my whole life. I didn't even know it was called the law of attraction until that book came out. And then I really delved into it, because I just knew that, wow, this is why I had all those things as a kid. This is why I've attracted all the things in my life that I've attracted, good and bad. I'm really understanding this on a deep level. And it was just music to my ears. So I really started incorporating a lot of that in my work. And in my work, I would travel around the United States and teach interior designers how to be successful financially. I had a corporate job. We had lots of locations. And, my calling card is that I could teach anybody to make six figures selling furniture, essentially. And I had a lot of people that did. And I was really successful at it. I made a lot of money myself doing that. So moved to Seattle, took over this territory, and was teaching this stuff to interior designers in that market. And after one of my sessions, one of the designers came up and she said, "You realize you're teaching law of attraction, right?" And I said, "I know I am, but I know that I can't say that in a group setting because it gets into teaching religion, and that's not really cool in a corporate environment. But I tried to weave it in as much as I can." And she said, "Have you ever heard of Abraham?" And I said, "Yeah, I know. I think I've heard of that person. I don't really know anything about them. I don't know what that is." She said, "But you really need to go listen to this because you sound like them." And so she goes to her desk, and she had a box set of CDs. And this was how long ago this was, but still it was a little past the CD era. So she hands me this box set of CDs, Abraham, once again, all in purple. And she says, "You need to go home and listen to this." And I thought it was really nice that she made that gesture. I said, "Okay, fine, I'll check it out." Took her box set of CDs, put them in the passenger seat of my car, and proceeded to drive home. Well, driving home that night with the Abraham CDs in my passenger seat, I drive up behind this black Range Rover, exactly the car that I was wanting to manifest. And the personalized license plate said Abraham.
Yeah, life is a dream, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm looking at that car, and I'm looking at my passenger seat thinking, okay, this is clearly a sign at long last I need to pay attention to this Abraham person. So I went home that night and I listened to every single CD in the box set. And it was the original teachings of Abraham from, I think, 1988. All of the original teachings where Jerry Hicks is interviewing Esther. She's channeling Abraham, and he asks all these questions, all these different eternal laws. It was very different than what they teach now. Now is an evolution of that. It was actually more complex at that time than it is now. So it just resonated with me so highly. I started really consuming Abraham, and the more I consumed Abraham, the more I found love for myself and my abilities, and the more I was sort of opening up to talking about it a little more and being a little more spiritual publicly with other people, talking about such things. And I started meditating. And in 2010, during a meditation, I had what I call a Kundalini awakening, where this energy erupted at the base of my spine and just ignited my whole body. and that energy has never left. It's flowing, it's zooming through me all the time. And after that time, I really started consuming Abraham, but I started sort of getting information that was like that, that was a little different,
Mm.
not contradictory to anything that they're sharing, but perhaps even more. And so it took me a few more years of really using that time to sort of reinvent my life. I got out of a dysfunctional marriage. I got out of the $1 million house that wasn't making me happy after all. Um, Changed my body. I used to weigh close to 300 pounds at that time, and I lost all of the weight around that time. So I really reinvented me during this time
Mm-hmm.
with what I was getting combined with the teachings of Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to where it changed my life so profoundly. The only thing that was left in my life that was still a sticking point was my job. I was in a mid six-figure executive position with a publicly held company, and I was thinking that I have to have this job. I have to be in this field. Even though I believed in law of attraction and knew all about it, I was sticking myself in that field out of fear of not making that kind of living.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept trying to find other jobs, thinking another version of the same career would make me happy. And I would sabotage that every single time, and it would not work out for some reason. And finally, I realized that what I was getting from the stream had changed me so profoundly that I could no longer not share it with the world. That I just had to come out of the closet for the second time in my life, this time as a channel, and just be public, and just sort of rip the Band-Aid off, and just tell everybody, this is what I do, this is who I am, and this is how it is. And that was toward the end of 2017, so not that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
I started the podcast, The Stream of David. And when I started channeling, it probably took me 2 years or so from the time I started speaking what I was getting to the time that I did the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And the speaking, I totally attribute that to Esther Hicks making the Abraham message very palatable to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because once I really got into Esther and really got into Abraham, it didn't seem weird anymore. It didn't seem woo or strange or bizarre. And I really got to the point where I didn't care if it did. I didn't care if it turned other people off, and I really got to where I realized that there's an audience for this. The people that are attracted to this are in the right place. The people that think it's weird and it's woo, they're right to not pay attention to it because they're not ready for it. It's not for them.
Oh.
And when I came to that realization, that was sort of the last leg of me learning to truly embrace all that I am and really love myself.
Mm.
And that was a big transformation for me. And from that point, things sped up quite a bit. I had the stream of consciousness. I knew what it was by then. I asked for a name. Years ago, I asked for a name of a spirit guide, and I got the name Philip. And then years later, I got very clear communication from what I now call the stream that they're not human. They are energy. They are consciousness. We are humanizing them when we give them a name, and it's okay to give them a name. There's nothing wrong with calling them Joshua or Joseph or Abraham or Seth or Theo or any of that stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. It's an identity that we can identify with. But to me, I just thought, wow, this is so much more than human. I'm just going to call you the stream.
Mm-hmm.
And they obviously were very positive about that. They, they're not really a they, but that's how I refer to them. We have no words to really describe what all of that is. And part of what you do as a channel is set an intention to find the words to communicate these thoughts that are way beyond human comprehension.
Mm.
And that's a challenge in the beginning as a channel. And the more you do it for other people, the more other people draw that out, and the better it gets. That's why I love doing live streams. I love doing in-person channeling. When I can do that again in the future, that would be great. Podcasts, anytime that I can share the stream's message and have somebody that's really engaged with that energy, asking the questions, new information comes out all the time.
It's a discursive method. It's interesting because it's very much a philosophical thing, like also the Greeks did that with discovered this discourse with Socrates, and I'm positive he was channeling as well. It's like, but he he didn't write things down, you know. It's like in those times it was Plato who wrote that later, you know. And yeah, this wisdom that came through him was definitely just the people asking the right questions. And you know, I think that that's how you probably developed your, obviously your channeling ability, is you asked yourself, obviously in some respect, but I think putting it out there and, you know, being able to, there's a dynamic there that I've noticed with channels, that it's you know, I think with Abraham it started with Esther, it was just Jerry, right? And Jerry was posing these questions, and he had very specific interests, you know, and I think that's what developed that material. But now on this world stage, you know, with these live streams and everything, you see, like as you were saying, things have changed a bit with the dynamics and with the what it's bringing up. And it's, yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and everybody has access to it. As you, I mean, but it's obvious, it's just, it's very interesting how you knew about something, this connection so early, and then you kind of began to use it as a tool of sorts to achieve certain goals, and you know, like a genie in a bottle kind of situation. And then you discovered that, you know, that wasn't making you happy, and that's the kind of the goal here. And then, but it's when you embrace that side of you completely, I guess, and realize that that is you, right? I mean, you would say also that the stream is that love element of you as well, right? I mean, that you don't, can you really separate yourself from that now, or is, how's that relationship
I
going?
think it's I think the stream flows to and through everyone,
Mm,
and everyone has their version of it. And it is, I'm as connected to it as it is to me. And the message is, it's interesting because when I'm in a high vibrational state, there's a certain level of knowing that's just present. But when I set the intention to full on channel, they come up with things that I could never imagine. And it is different. And there is a different cadence to the way they speak and mannerisms that I take on, and things like that. And it's not like being possessed. You know, a lot of times people think that this energy is just taken over my body and it's speaking through me. I don't really feel like it's like that. It's very hard to describe. It's almost like I take my consciousness and allow my consciousness to step back and allow them to step forward. I'm present while it's going on, but when it's all said and done and it's over, and they depart, if you will, and I come back, I don't have much recollection of it. Bits and pieces, and sometimes I get things later that happened, but I don't have a lot of recollection of it. And I'll do these live streams, and sometimes we'll have a technical difficulty, and I'll sort of come out of the connection, and people, I'll just say, well, just ask me questions, I'll see what I can answer. And they'll start asking these questions that I can't begin to answer.
wow. Mm,
I have yet to see the stream get stumped. Of course, I always tell everybody, you know, they are limited to my vocabulary and intellect. So if you're using a word or a language that I can't comprehend from my human perspective, I'm not going to be able to get anything from them, because I am the one that's comprehending the question and comprehending the answer, and giving it back. But I'm so aligned with them in that moment that I'm just getting thoughts that the thoughts come so fast, I can't even keep up with the speech. You'll notice that when I channel, I stammer a lot because it's just coming. It's like rapid fire. It's just all instantaneous information. Sometimes the information is there before the question's even asked.
mm.
It's sort of like I'm just dying to answer something before the speakers even finish asking the question, because I already know the answer to it.
This is an
So
interesting point, because I don't mean to jump in, but well, I do. But I heard you say a story that you had something happen with your brain, or you had was a mild stroke? I can't remember. Is this correct? What I heard about?
I
And
had what finally happened is I
mm,
actually fell at work and got injured
mm,
and hit my head. I had a concussion, and that's where this mark over here ended
okay.
up
Yep.
from. Didn't have that before. Now it's there, and it seems
All
to
right.
be permanent more than 2 years later.
Okay.
Um, and I had a concussion, and I had some memory loss and things like that. And I was already channeling prior to that. It wasn't like I, it would be a lovely story, but it's not true. I hit my head and suddenly I'm channeling it. It wasn't like that. And I don't want people going out hitting their heads thinking there's suddenly going to be channels,
Right.
because it didn't work like that. I was doing this, but the accident was my manifestation, I thought in the beginning, to help me exit my job. And no, there wasn't some big lawsuit or millions of dollars paid or anything like that at all, not at all. But I had the option to return to work, and I chose to resign after that injury, because it really made me realize, it put things into perspective for me. And I see now that I changed my perspective, and in the changing of the perspective, I manifested an ascension for myself. And what followed that, if you've listened to that, it's all on the podcast, it's all chronicled in the podcast. My ascension culminated in me having multiple physical ailments, not just from the accident, but other things that were going on suddenly that left me bedridden for
Wow.
days.
Wow.
So much so that I couldn't even go to the restroom. It was that bad. I was literally bedridden. I called my doctor. She said, "You need to call 911 and go to the hospital." I knew right away the hospital was not going to help me. I'd already been in the hospital for the concussion, that I was going through an ascension. I actually contacted a healer who helped me understand what was happening. And I went through that period. And then after that period, I was in better health than I'd been in my entire adult life, feeling better than I had felt in my entire adult life, and the relief of back pain and all of this stuff. So I realize now that I have some time and distance looking back at that time. All of it, of course, was my manifestation. I attracted, getting injured at work because I didn't want to be in the job anymore. I attracted the way they treated me, which was not very well after a 20-year career with a company as a top executive, which led me to separate from them, and really led me to do what I call jump out of the airplane, leave a very high paying job at a time in my life where I didn't have a giant nest egg that I was sitting on. Had a very high cost of living. At the time, I was living in San Francisco and living in a really nice place and driving a really nice car, and helping raise my then sister-in-law. Someone else's child, a 16-year-old daughter, was living in my household, and I was her caregiver basically and provider. I had more responsibility than ever, and I decided just to quit with no plan. I did not have a business plan. I did not have any clue how I was going to make a living as a channel. I just knew that channeling and sharing this information that I've received with the world was what I was going to do with the rest of my life, no matter what. Even if it meant living under a box, as I like to say, living under in a box under a frame, which I still do not.
Yeah.
But 2 years later, I'm still here, still doing it, and have no intention not to do it. And the opportunity to create a course came along, and I was already writing the book. I started writing the book before I left the job, and I was doing the podcast, and then I decided to quote unquote jump out of the airplane. And I had no plan, and I already knew enough about publishing to know that I was not going to be able to make a living writing a book. Most authors do not live off of their books, unless you're J.K. Rawlings or somebody like that.
Yes.
And your books are being made into movies and all of that. You're just not able to do that anymore. So I had the book, and I was going to self-publish the book, and I reached out via social media to find, I set an intention to find an editor that would edit my book for me, because I'm dyslexic. I love to write, but gosh, I'm dyslexic. There's tons of typos. Autocorrect is my best friend and my worst enemy, being a dyslexic. And I knew I needed a really good editor. Plus, I have a 10th grade education. I taught myself everything that I know, including I did teach myself how to write with a certain style, but I knew I needed editing. I needed somebody that was more of a grammarian than I am. So this wonderful person named Kat Wanders shows up in my Instagram feed saying, "Hey, I'm a book editor. I love spiritual writing. I'm a follower of the stream. I would love to edit your book." And she and I just hit it off. When we met, it was just like one of those scenarios where we'd known each other for multiple lifetimes. And I know that we have. And the relationship just took off from there. And so she edited my first book. She actually introduced me to the person who became my publisher. And she introduced me to someone who taught me how to do an online course. And I remember at the beginning of that conversation saying, well, I'm not going to do online courses. I'm an author. I'm going to channel. I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to do what Abraham does. I'm not going to do some silly online course. No. And she says, well, it's a nice way to make a living. If you're an author, having some coursework that goes along with what you teach that you charge for is a way that you can actually support yourself. So I think you need to think about this. I was really turning my nose up at it. I was really judging it. And so I stepped away from it and meditated about it, and the stream swooped in. And I think it was the first time I ever really got the vibe from them that they were sort of almost saying, hey, dumbass.
Yeah.
They didn't really say that, but that's the vibe I got was, hey,
Yeah.
pay attention to what is happening, what you've manifested here, because if you really want to help people change their lives, this online course is a way to do that. And that's your intention. You didn't set an intention just to go do workshops for the glamour of doing workshops. You want to help people change their lives. So if you want to do that, here's a way to get people into a concentrated scenario to really help them change. And it all just became so clear to me that I needed to do this course. And I realized what she taught was the software and the marketing and the mechanics of doing a course. The thing I liked about her is she did not tell you what the course was supposed to be. That had to come from you. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, well, I know that I want to teach a course in learning how to do the things that I've done in my life that have cleaned up my vibration, if you will, and raised it to the point where I've completely reinvented myself now, to where I, quit my corporate job. I've lost 100 pounds. I got out of a bad relationship. I've walked away from old friendships. I've learned to be alone. I've learned to be in silence. I've learned to not judge other people. I've learned to give no power to politics and just all of that stuff, which, wow, I've spent 10 years, I realized, doing all of this in my life. And now I need to find a way to package this and teach it to other people. So,
okay. So the person that, it was interesting because you always, when you, in the way the universe works, you always get somebody that helps, if that, obviously you had the dyslexia.
Right person at the right time, if you pay attention.
But if you didn't have like dyslexia and stuff like that, and you felt you could do it on your own, it would not be as effective. It's like, we are like, in some ways we're doomed to require, the people to come into our lives at certain moments. I think that's part of the human experience, because obviously in non-physical things just appear, but for some reason it feels like here we have these certain pieces that we have, and we fit in a puzzle, and it's like we need to be open to allowing others to being their puzzle pieces, and they will assist us. Your website's amazing. It's like I can see it's professional, and it's, you don't have that with everybody in the channeling scene, where it seems like
I was very fortunate to manifest the right team of people, and somebody that went through boot camp, Matt, the guy from Sydney. He does a lot of live streams and stuff with me.
I think I've seen him. Yeah.
He owns a digital marketing company.
And
and he's good friends with Dr. Joe Dispenza, and
oh wow,
cool. has helped him with some social media and things like that. And he took Matt he was a fan of the stream. He ended up taking Taya boot camp, and when he graduated, he said, this has helped me so profoundly in so many ways in my life. That I want to give back. What can I do for you? And we've been working together ever since. And it's been over a year now. And I created everything myself. The woman that taught me how to do my online course teaches you how to do it, but you do it yourself. So I built out everything myself. I built my guided meditation app. I built out all my, there's 33 pieces of software I use in my business.
Great number.
It's interesting. I counted it all up one time. I'm like, wow, 33, look at that. So 33 pieces of software to run what I do. And I created all of it. I set it all up. I created all of it. I know what an API key is now. I know how, all this jargon and stuff that I never knew before. I was never a tech person. I like technology. I think it's fascinating how we can make things work for us so well. But I'm not a coder. I'm not writing computer code. I do not have a mathematical mind at all. So I set all that stuff up myself, and I created this online course. And right away, I was just amazed. I went on my podcast and said, hey, I've got this course. If you're interested, let me know. And suddenly I had a line of people that wanted to take this course. I thought, this is so cool. Well, the interesting thing is, and I was very upfront about it, the course didn't even exist yet. So I had people writing me checks and giving me money to take this course. And the person that was teaching me how to do it said, it's okay. You're going to create the course with your first class, and that's going to become your course.
Right.
And it was just such a high vibration thing to do, because I realized if I had just gone from my ego state and created some course my way as somebody who's been channeling really their whole life, it wouldn't have been the same as it is that I created it with people that started from a blank slate.
Mm.
And having them co-create that course with me is what made it what it is. And so it was perfection. I knew what I needed to teach, and it just sort of unfolded into this course. It was called Abundance Breakthroughs in the beginning. And then I realized once we got to the end of it, that this isn't a course that you just take and you learn and you're done. That we were really learning the spiritual practice that I'd created for myself. And I touched on it in the book. There's a chapter in my book called TIA, T-Y-A, Trusting Your Abundance. And I realized that, wow, what I do is the practice of that. These 4 things that I teach in this course really are the 4 pillars of that. And that's where TIA came from.
Mm.
After the course was already born, it transitioned, it evolved and grew into TIA. And then it grew from an online course to a boot camp.
Mm.
Because there are a lot of online courses out there. And for me, I don't know how to teach this in a situation where you're just accessing digital information and learning it. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different story. And a big part of TIA is identifying your root transgressors and forgiving sort of healing your inner child, if you will. That's a big part of it. And that requires coaching. And that requires some one-on-one interaction with someone who knows what they're doing, and even requires, for me, the stream. I channel the stream for everybody that comes into my boot camp program, and the stream helps you determine what the root causes or your root transgressors are in your life, because everything that's happened in your life up until this moment is a culmination of your vibration, and your vibration is created via your ego consciousness as a physical being. And that starts even prior to birth, but we really kind of pick up at birth. We don't go pre-birth. It's sort of like you're born, you have physical contact with other human beings, and then you're that thirsty sponge that's just drinking it all in, and that starts to inform your life.
Mm.
And how you react to everything that's going on around you, and what's going on around you obviously impacts who you're going to develop into. But the good news is that there's aspects of all of us that we like, and there's aspects of all of us that we want to change.
Mm.
And when you figure out what the roots are, and the roots are usually just 2 or 3 little things from early childhood that just branch out into everything.
Mm.
And when you trace back the unwanted aspects, if you will, you can go back and really pinpoint the root cause of that vibration that's developed into a full-blown, unwanted vibration now.
Mm.
So that's what we do in boot camp, is we get in and start working on that. So we work on finding appreciation for all of the negative things that has happened in our lives, people, circumstances, and events. We call them transgressors. So anything that you've got going on that is an abundance block, and we all have something, we're not perfect and we're not intending to be perfect, but there's always something that most of us want to work on, that would like to change, or we want more, or we want to become better at something. We're expansive by nature. And when we stop expanding, we start regressing.
Mm.
And expanding feels a lot better, right? So we get the roadblocks out of the way that hamper the expansion in the areas where you want to expand.
Mm.
We do that. We really shift perspective on everything that's happened in our lives. We get rid of that victim mentality. We start taking ownership of everything that's happened, even childhood abuse, which is a hard hurdle for a lot of people to get over, because we're taught to think like victims. But when you go back and say, okay, I attracted that somehow. I attracted my parents. In my example, yes, I was born into a father that left when I was 6, and a mother that, checked out at that point and was never present. But look what that did for me. That allowed me to be who I am now. It allowed me to be this independent thinker. I really charted my own course. I did not live life at all the way society told me I was supposed to live it.
Mm.
And here I am, 52 years old, thriving and loving myself and loving the world, and thriving during the pandemic. And, I have these tools to do that. And that's something that, now 2 years later, I created Taya Bootcamp in March of 2018. And it was something else in the beginning, like I said, but it's now Taya Bootcamp. And after 2 years of graduates in our Taya community now, the Taya community is thriving. Everyone that I'm in contact with in our graduate program, they're doing great. They're all employed, they're healthy, they're happy, they're not freaked out by the pandemic, they're not really freaked out by what we call the global reset that's going on. They're eager for what's next. They have the tools to do well in life no matter what.
Absolutely.
And then I have friends that aren't into this stuff at all. And I kind of like having friends that aren't so into this stuff. It's sort of like it's nice to kind of clock out, and talk about something else. And they're freaked out. They're depressed. They're frightened. They're scared. They're really wound up about politics. The ones that, people in the United States are really wound up about politics right now. And yeah, I want to help everybody, but I have to accept that not everybody's ready for it. And not everybody wants to be helped. Not by this, especially.
No.
So that's kind of where I am today. Is I'm very happy that we created Taya Bootcamp and the Taya practice. I see people thriving with it. It's extremely satisfying for me. And now that I see the contrast, and now that we've been faced with this global pandemic and this uncertainty, and I see how the people that do this practice are thriving, I am really on fire to get out and just share it with the world in every way. Boot camp is boot camp. I teach Taya all the time in my Facebook group, and we have a Taya book that's coming out. Boot camp is for people that want to get into an intensive 12-week program and really, really, absorb this as the new version of them. And not everybody's ready for that, but for the people that are, boot camp's great. But this stuff just oozes out of me all the time now.
Right. I mean, I'm going to put all the links below and the about all the stuff you're doing with the boot camps and the Taya. And I think for me, it was the Joshua Abundance boot camp that I did with Gary that was just before this all happened. And I see, like, in my story, how that, it's destiny, that you kind of like test yourself also in this time. You can see the world splitting, and you can literally see the choices people are making to follow certain pathways, and it's always a choice, even in a global thing. It's not really global. It's very much a local global experience. And I was wondering, David, it would be possible to channel the stream?
Certainly.
What I'm going to do is going to put a little break on the video, and then we'll come back, and then I guess the stream will be there when we come back. All right. So
yeah, let's do that.
All right. So.